Balance is one of the fundamental things that we want to train into our horses. And the reason that balance is so important is not only so that our horses move better, but also because they are more confident. So horses are prey animals, and this means that if they lose their balance, they have the potential to fall over and get eaten, which seems kind of silly to us, but in our horses' minds, it's very important. So anytime we interfere with our horse's balance or our horses lose their balance on their own, they will oftentimes have a slight moment of panic. So if you turn a horse around in a strange way in the barn or something like that, even if it's a calm, trained horse, a lot of times I'll see their eyes get really big for a second. And at that moment, the horse took an awkward step and lost their balance. And when we do that continuously with our horses will start to develop fear, because if it's windy or something like that is going to make them more on edge. If they're also not able to maintain their balance, it's going to make them even more on edge. That's one of the reasons that balance is so important to training. Also because when our horses are balanced, we don't have aids that interfere with them, which allows them to move in a way that's graceful and able for them to carry us well. And this will make your horse have longer longevity and be able to get to a higher level. This is Moon. He is one of our school horses. We've had him for about 2.5 years, and he is probably the greenest of our school horses that we currently have. He's had some different injuries in the paddock that has made his training go on and off, but he's a really good boy. He's super quirky, and we always joke that he's a ladies' man. All the girls love him. One of the first signs that your horse is not balanced is that your horse is heavy. You can create heaviness, or the horse can create heaviness. If there's heaviness because the rider created it or heaviness because the horse created it, it doesn't matter. Either way, you are not balanced. That would be like you're each holding a line and you're leaning back. If one of you lets go, the other one is going to lose their balance. Anytime we have pressure on the reins, that is the first sign that our horse is out of balance. We can, again, create that out of balancedness by taking too much or pulling, or the horse can create it by either losing their balance or not carrying themselves in a collected way. So when the horse is heavy or you create heaviness, it doesn't matter whether you're the one who's creating the heaviness or the horse is creating the heaviness. If you dent the corner of the horse's lip, you create the heaviness. If the horse dents the corner of the lip, they create the heaviness. But either way, if he starts to become heavy, I'm gonna always fix it. It doesn't matter whether it's me or it's him. So you can see that this Boucher Snapple always stays in alignment with the cheek piece, except for fleeting moments like right there. And see, every time he starts to become heavy, I ask him to become light. And so when he's light, he's carrying himself in a good way. If I start to create pressure, he's going to try to counteract that by creating pressure too. So even when I stop, see how I try to just keep asking him to become lighter and lighter until he stops. Another sign that your horse is unbalanced is that whenever you have them stand still, they'll keep taking steps forward. So what they're doing when they're doing that is they'll slowly start to lean on their toes. And just like me leaning on my toes right here, I'll lean. And then when I start to lose my balance, see, I'll take a step and then I'll bring my other foot to match it. And then I'll keep leaning. So when you have a horse that is constantly doing that creeping forward, that's a sign that they're unbalanced. And you can see me as a human mimicking that in my own body, and you can feel how that's making you lose your balance by coming forward. Another sign that your horse is unbalanced is that they splay, either in the hind or in the front. So what splaying is any sort of wide step. It's more common that you see it in the hind, but you also see it in the front. When the horse, for example, if I ask his hind end to move that way away from me, he is going to have to step his left hind, in this case, out. But when he does that step, by crossing the right hind under and stepping the left hind out, it shouldn't be wider than the width of his hips. So let's try and see how he does, if he splays or not. So that wasn't too bad. It was a little wide. I'm going to ask him to step in the front. And that wasn't too bad either. So his horse is better trained than most of them, but that's a very common there. That was a wider step. Usually I don't reward that. That's why it's kind of funny. So, but you could see that on that step that he took a wider step. That's such a common thing that you find with green horses, especially as they start to overbend, that they'll take these big wide steps in the hind. And when I'm on the right side and he takes that step on the left hind that's wider than the width of his hips, that makes the left side of his back dip. And when I'm riding horses and they do that, it feels to me kind of like they're doing a burnout and like you would in a car, and you're losing control of the hind end. So that's another sign that your horse is unbalanced. Like we just talked about, when the horse splays, that can be one of the signs that they're unbalanced. One of the other signs that they're unbalanced that kind of adds to that is when their shoulders aren't straight over their front feet. So meaning that their front legs aren't perpendicular. So the front legs, even when we get our horses to push from behind, are still a weight-bearing structure on our horses. And just like if we're going to build a table or a building or any sort of structure, we want to have strong pillars on that structure. And so when our horses are doing this on their shoulders, that's them leaning forward. Those are the horses that are going to kind of creep on their toes. When they do this, that's going to be a sign of them having potentially bad behavior, but also not being balanced because they're starting to lay back. So that's front to back, just the same direction that Mona is facing, but they can also lean side to side, especially when you ask them to take steps on the front. So if his fronts aren't aligned, if his shoulders isn't aligned over his front hooves, then he's not balanced, and he's actually doing a pretty good job of it. So if he were to take a really wide step or lean in some way on a shoulder, that's an indication that he's not balanced. So if I ask him to move his hind over and he leans more on the outside shoulder, that would be a sign that he's unbalanced. So a common thing that you see on their front legs when you ask them to step over is they'll do this on the opposite. When you ask them to step over on their hind, they'll do this and lean on the opposite front, which is a sign of them not being balanced as well. Another sign that your horse is unbalanced is if they have a hard time stopping. Most people are taught to pull to stop their horses, and every mammal, when they feel some sort of pulling action, their instinct is to counteract it. This is a hard thing for us as riders because we are also mammals, and so our instinct is to pull against the horses. So what we need to do when we ride well is retrain ourselves to not pull. And when most people stop their horses and they try to pull this way, the horse will push that way. So the more we pull, the more out of balance our horses are. When we ask our horses to stop well, we use position to stop them. So position, having a good position with the horse is also a sign that your horse has good balance. So if you ask your horse to stop and it takes you like 4 or 5 steps to stop them before they stop, that's a sign that your horse is out of balance. Before I learned to ride classically, like if I wanted to stop in that corner, I would start asking my horse to stop like 3 or 4 fence lengths before that corner because I knew my aids weren't going to work right away. And that was partly because my horses weren't balanced. And so when I asked them to stop, it'd be like, they're stopping until they finally stop. And so having a hard time stopping your horse is another sign that your horse lacks balance. If you want to learn more about work in hand and how to get a more harmonious relationship with your horse and learn how to communicate in harmony with your horse, check out our online Harmony in Hand course. The link is in our bio on the Instagram.